the next item on the agenda is that citizens will be allowed to address the board on items not on the agenda. For items that are on the agenda, citizens will be allowed to address the board at the time the motion is on the floor. Is there anyone who would wish to speak to the board? Please state your name for the record.
Chair Fink, Commissioners, my name is Kevin Skwira-Brown. I'm in the 1st District. I come before you today as a spokesperson for the We Are Watching campaign. We understand that next week in a board workshop, you will be discussing potential changes to the Code of Conduct for elected officials. Having advocated for a code and having closely tracked the adoption and application of the current code, we offer the following recommendations. We do so mindful that the Code of Conduct is intended to serve the citizens and taxpayers of St. Louis County by setting enforceable standards for the conduct of elected officials that protect citizens and employees from abuse and taxpayers from the financial liability stemming from that abuse. Let me note that just moments ago I was given a copy of proposed revisions to the code, apparently generated by administration. Our specific recommendations are as follows. In the section titled Conflicts of Interest, Commissioners should avoid as possible any potential conflict of interest or perceived conflict of interest. Commissioners should publicly disclose relationships, both personal and professional, with entities or principal stakeholders and entities involved in issues that come before the board. Commissioners shall abstain from a vote and from advocating publicly or privately to other commissioners or other governmental officials regarding any issue for which they have a conflict of interest. In the section titled Education Programs, please revise this to read that elected officials must, rather than are encouraged to, attend at least one internal Code of Conduct training per year. External offerings are neither screened for nor documented as addressing the issues for which the training is being targeted. Also, taxpayer money should not be spent on travel to and attendance at trainings which the county already provides internally. In the section titled Reporting Suspected Violations, the current code provides no public notification that a complaint was received, and it gives virtually unlimited discretion for action, or more specifically inaction, on the part of the Ethics Committee. Further, it fails to articulate the form such a complaint must take and what information must be included. In making changes, the process must not create barriers to reporting. A standardized form should be provided with which complaints are to be reported. Once a complaint is filed, it should then be the county's responsibility to investigate internally or through a neutral third party the facts surrounding the complaint prior to making even preliminary determinations as to the sufficiency or validity of the complaint. Standards for such determinations need to be clearly spelled out. For all complaints filed against an elected official, the existence of the complaint, the committee recommendations regarding said complaint, and investigation findings related to the complaint must be publicly reported. The voting public must have this information in order to fulfill their role in ultimately holding such officials accountable. The inclusion of the sheriff and county attorney on the Ethics Committee is essential to create transparency and fairness. Their presence is essential in order to avoid potential for coercion of committee members by those with the power to affect their employment. The board chair has power over the appointed administrator, and the administrator has power over the affirmative action officer. In the section titled Consequences of Violating the Code of Conduct, the consequences of violations need to be clearly defined. These consequences need to be aimed at redressing the infraction and eliminating further violations of the code. As is, the current code allows for arbitrary, politically motivated responses, or even no response at all. We have heard from members of this board endorsement for transparency and accountability. We have also heard claims that charges of its absence have been and are overstated and misinformed. You can, by adopting that and then following strong guidelines for conduct, generate confidence that the high standards of transparency and accountability that we seem to all publicly endorse are indeed taking place. We urge you to resist the temptation for self-protection through perpetuation of an ineffective and easily manipulated code. Instead, address the structural deficits of what exists and move forward committed to real transparency and genuine accountability. Thank you. I have copies of the recommendations.
Would you please pass those out? Were there comments? Did you have a comment, Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Fink. Actually, I have a couple of questions, and I'm wondering if Kevin, if you would be so kind. One of the questions that I have is, you know, I continue to hear about the watchdog group, and I'm wondering if you have like a membership and a group so that I actually have an idea of who I'm addressing, because it is difficult, and this is very consistent with the actions that I have taken in the past, because if a township officer, say as an example, comes in front of this board, I was the very first person to say, are your comments that of the township board? And do you have a resolution as such to back that up? So I'm curious as to the makeup of your group and how many people there are, because Kevin, all of us are elected to represent a whole lot of people, and it would be helpful, at least to me as a commissioner from the 6th District, to know who I am responding to. Secondly, and just in listening to you, I have to make this comment, because once again, you've came up in front of us and you've set the standard and the bar at a point that puts one elected official over another elected official. And I heard that when you said you have to have the sheriff and the attorney on this code of conduct. And you know, you really need to go back and look at the statutes and what elected officials, the powers that they have and don't have. Because when it comes to accountability, I want that entire group, once I know who they are, to understand one thing: I am accountable. But I'm accountable to all of the people of St. Louis County, not to any one special interest group, but to everyone. But you set this bar high enough so that you can come back in 2 or 3 weeks and criticize us. And that's, it's pretty much a pattern that I've seen. And once again, I see that bar has been set. Many of the requests are reasonable, but the ones specifically on putting other elected officials to oversee county commissioners, that one is just not doable in my book, and I don't think it's doable if you look at how the statutes lay out. So we appreciate your comments, but really the background work that you need to do before you make some of these, I think you're amiss on some of this stuff. So if you could provide us with the name of the individuals, that would be very helpful, and it'll give me an opportunity to respond to them on an individual basis, where I'll feel a lot more comfortable in making sure that they understand the processes that we go through. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Kevin.
A response?
Chair Fink, Commissioners, Commissioner Nelson, a couple points I'd like to make. Myself, Kevin Skwira-Brown, and Kathy Heltzer have been and continue to be the spokespeople for the We Are Watching group, We Are Watching campaign. I won't be providing you with a list of everyone who has been involved and continues to be involved in the campaign. My second point would be that I understand that the code of conduct is for all elected officials, in which case a county attorney who's an elected official, a sheriff who I believe is an elected official, and an auditor is an elected official, I believe are equally covered by and the code of conduct. And so I don't actually see that one would be putting one elected official over another by including a variety of elected officials in the group that reviews complaints that could be brought against any of those elected officials. So, thank you.
Commissioner Forsman, and I'm not going to let this get into a big debate, so let's
I also, you know,
questions here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would be interested in, you know, I mean, the We Are Watching campaign, and you know, and you have to realize where I'm at, and Kevin, you and I have had the conversation privately there, is that when your group had put out a report card, I ended up, even though you had incorrect, when you take into consideration the fact that I was incorrectly credited for voting for the Walmart facility, the Farm America, and I voted for Falk's Pharmacy, the local vendor, you gave me credit for voting for the Walmart, and I just wanted to know, once you took my credit away, I actually ended up with the lowest mark of all 7 commissioners. So, you know, it was an F-. And because of that, I mean, you know, and I certainly understand the fact that we had differences in the way we perceived the grading. But all of that said is that as someone that is being watched and being criticized, I mean, you know, and my actions and the actions of this board are always under scrutiny. And I think we are transparent. We have open meetings. We are typically in an open forum. I think that it's Commissioner Nelson's point is a very good point. In the idea of transparency, I'm sure that it should be equally with the We Are Watching campaign. I think that while you not only know who the commissioners are and practically everything we say in an open forum, you also know everything, you know who voted for us, you know every dollar we spent, you can go through our expense accounts. We're all public people. You can tell where I've been, where everyone on this board has been, because it's all public knowledge. I think that Commissioner Nelson is absolutely correct in asking, and I would ask the same thing, that two things. One is that we have a membership list. I think that's should be. If you are a group that is criticizing the board, in order of transparency, you should let us know who your president is. And I also think that we should have meetings of the minutes. For instance, I would like to know when the report cards came out, was the motion, you know, here are the report cards, adopted by, and then, you know, whether, I don't need to know every person, but, you know, if there were 15 people in the room and 14 voted for it, you know, that was a correct thing, you know, we should know who our accusers are. I mean, that's because certainly as someone that's been on the receiving end, the critical end, and I don't think I've done anything wrong that you know, I think it was a matter of disagreement on where we were at. I think that, and I'll just stop with this, is that I think that it's absolutely, if we are being asked for transparency, that We Are Watching group, I would expect records of your minutes, voting, who the president are, and the membership. I think that's absolutely critical. Or if that isn't possible, then I would say that your group doesn't have the credibility that you're asking us to have. So with that, and I'll stop with that, and it'd be worth going back to your membership and see if that's a doable thing there. So thank you.
Chair Fink, Commissioner Forsman. I appreciate your comments, both of the commissioners who had interest in the workings of the We Are Watching campaign. I will take your comments back. It strikes me initially that asking for the minutes of a citizens group for the county board doesn't seem quite what I would expect, that you would be wanting the minutes for every group or entity membership list for every entity that comes before the board. So I find that a little bit unusual, but I certainly will review that. And so I appreciate your continued interest in the activities of the organization.
Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Fink. And Mr. Brown, the one thing that I want to make very clear to you, when I ask for that membership list, you can travel from north to south, from east to west in Commissioner District 6, and if someone calls or has a concern, Commissioner Nelson either goes to see him or he picks up the phone, he calls them, we have those discussions. It does concern me that there may be people out there that don't necessarily understand the role that is taking place here. And if they are citizens in my district, those are the ones that I will be responding to, unless, and if you look up and down this board, when I go outside of my district, as every other commissioner on this board does, we talk to the commissioner in that district. I'll pick up the phone and call Commissioner Sweeney or Commissioner Forsman or Commissioner Fink. I don't think I've ever had an issue in Commissioner O'Neill's district, so I don't think I've ever had that. But Commissioner Rocker, certainly, Commissioner Crone, before Commissioner Dahlberg, absolutely, where you pick up the phone and you say, this such and such constituent has such and such an issue. I have been helping them with it. I wanted to make you aware of the situation and take any advice from that other commissioner, because we do, even though we are St. Louis County commissioners, we represent certain districts, and my concern is that I am hearing those voices from my district as well as from all of St. Louis County. So when I ask that question, it is to afford me as the elected representative of those 26,000, 27,000, 28,000 people, as that elected representative, and I know our districts vary a little bit, so I use that term of 25, 26, 27,000, whatever it is. As we do that, it's really important to us. I understand your voice coming here, but Kevin, I have to tell you, to really have the credibility of representing a group of people. A week ago, we had a gentleman here representing the leaseholders. Well, by gosh, they have a list that they give us of all of the leaseholders, and yes, they do send us the minutes of their meetings. And those are the types of communication efforts that if your group, if the true interest is for better government, then the transparency that I am requesting, I think will lead to better government. And absolutely, I as an elected official, I don't think anyone is ever going to say that, you know, that's the goal from day one. It's the reason you run for elected office, is to have better government. So help us get there, but please, to help us get there, it isn't the grandstanding, it isn't the public displays that help us get there. It's when we sit down, roll up our sleeves, and start working together to get things done. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Kevin.
Attorney Ford.
Thank you. Mr. Skwira-Brown, will you please tell the commissioners what my involvement is or has been with We Are Watching?
The county attorney has had no involvement with the We Are Watching campaign, professionally or personally.
Kevin, as you prepare to leave, I'd like to point out that during the last 2 weeks, each time that you came in front of the board, you brought something that will or was on our agenda. As you continue to do that, you will be welcome in this house.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Apparently there is. Please sign in and state your name for the record.
Bob Tamman from Sudan. I think those of you who have been on the board have seen me. I come to meetings occasionally, usually with my wife, and it's I kind of like this idea where you come and you get your 4 minutes or whatever. But I'd have to say, in the meetings I've been coming to the last 2-3 years, I watch the people, some rattle on a little bit, but frankly, this is the most I've seen any commenter badgered by the commissioners. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Seeing no one else, the consent agenda would be in order. It's been moved and supported. Is there any comments on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. The reports of boards and committees, Commissioner Nelson, Finance and Budget.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Fink. I have but one item before us today. It is directing the purchasing department for vehicles for 09, purchase of vehicles for 09. We had quite a bit of discussion about this at the Committee of the Whole, and I would move it, Mr. Chair.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Commissioner Nelson, you get the first word on the discussions. There were 2 points that needed to be that were being addressed. Will you address them?